My presentation is going to be on how induced recharge will help us to provide sustainable and safe water supply in fluoride affected regions. So if you see, there are over 200 million people around the world are consuming groundwater that is rich in fluoride. I think I'm audible, am I right?
Hello. Sir, actually we are recording. So
okay, sorry, okay. In India too.
I think one more request. Huh? You will have to just signal them.
Can I carry this with me? I think this is okay. I can
sit here.
No, I have to stay. See, in India itself, about 60 to 65 million people are affected by consuming fluoride-rich groundwater. And though there are number of treatment methods that have been advocated, if you take in Andhra Pradesh, presently Telangana, there is a method called Nalgonda technique, right? Though there are number of techniques, people seldom use them because they are a little bit complicated and time consuming, as well as it is cost intensive. So nobody literally uses any treatment method, and more so you don't see any difference in the water, right? When fluoride is 5 milligram per liter, you don't see any difference, and you are not going to have immediate impact. It is going to be a long-term impact. So nobody bothers. So we thought of whether rainfall recharge can be an effective way to dilute concentration of fluoride in groundwater in situ. That means there is no need for any post-treatment method. So that is the objective of our study. So though there are number of previous studies, some authors have made some limited study and they simply said recharge will certainly help to reduce the concentration of fluoride by simple dilution. But however, there is a big question mark. We did a major study near Hyderabad along with the National Geophysical Research Institute. We got some contradicting results. Here is the diagram showing the concentration of fluoride in some of the observation wells around a recharging pond, something like the previous speaker has said, right? There is a pond that was used to recharge groundwater, but you can see over a period of 1.5 years, in spite of heavy rainfall, the pond was full, but still the groundwater fluoride concentration is not reducing, as you can see. So these are all the number of wells. So there is a big issue whether this will really work or not. So with this objective, we had carried out this study. Right? Here is the scenario around the world. Right? Fluoride is a major problem not only in India, in several parts of the world. In India, if you see, almost the problem is very widely distributed. Especially in southern India, we had worked at these two spots. Right? In fact, 3 sites, one site in Nalgonda and another site, another 2 sites in Tamil Nadu. I am going to restrict my presentation to only one particular site, that is the lowermost red circle. That is this district, which is again famous for fluoride-rich groundwater. That is Dharmaburi district, where concentration of fluoride in groundwater is anywhere between 2 to 7 milligram per liter, whereas the recommended limit of fluoride is between 1 to 1.5. Less than 1 is also harmful, greater than 1.5 is also harmful. So people in the region, very old people, they are suffering from skeletal problem, as you can see. Right, they have been consuming water for more than 50 to 60 years, but the young kids have got dental fluorosis, as you can see in the picture. So this is the site which I am going to take up for today's presentation. There is a small river, right, which is flowing towards east, as you can see. Geologically, the region comprises of 2 major rock types. One is chornithite, another one is gneiss, epidote hornblende gneiss. These are the rocks that result into release of fluoride into groundwater. So it is a geogenic problem which is very difficult to tackle. What we did a long-term study. We commenced sometime during July 2011. Over 35 wells, existing wells were sampled by us. Right, we have been sampling on bi-monthly basis since July 2011. Over 800 groundwater samples have been analyzed for all the major ions, including fluoride. And apart from that, we collected rock samples and soil samples. We did 3 drilling to understand the subsurface variation in fluoride. And the next slide also shows some pictures during the field work. Right, you can see the mighty wells, very long, large diameter, deep dug wells. Right, our students working in the field. The right bottom corner shows the drilling. And coming to the results, there are 2 important minerals which are rich in fluoride. Fluorine, about 3% of these minerals comprise of fluorine. They only release, likely to release fluoride in groundwater. They are the 2 minerals. One is biotite, which is a mica. Another one is hornblende. We took the rock samples. We made thin sections of rock samples and observed the presence of these minerals, which you can see at the bottom diagram. And this is the chemical reaction that is likely to release fluoride upon a long residence period of groundwater interacting with these minerals. In order to check whether such a relation is responsible for the chemistry of groundwater, right? Suppose if the mineral reacts with water, that should lead to release of the major ions which you see on the right hand side of the equation. So there should be a positive, any question?
At the end, if you could note down the questions.
So if this reaction is going to take place, that should result into release of all the major ions which you see on the right hand side. So fortunately, because we have over 600 samples, so here you can see a positive relation between fluoride and the major ions which you see on the right hand side of the 2 equations. So this confirms these are the minerals that are resulting into release of fluoride into groundwater. Right. Further, we did number of laboratory experiments known as patch tests. So we took these 2 rocks, that is the charnockite as well as epidote hornblende gneiss. We powdered them in different sizes. I am showing 2 sizes here, right? 45 micron and 145 micron. That means upon weathering, the rocks undergo disintegration and they get pulverized. So they slowly react with water. So how the reaction will take place in nature? So we duplicated them in the laboratory. So here again you can see we did the experiment for over about 2000 hours. On the x-axis shows the time and the y-axis is the concentration of ions. So we used different waters, in situ water, and this diagram shows the complete ultra pure, completely double distilled water was allowed to interact. You can see the increase in the concentration of all the ions, including fluoride, which is on the top. So the release of fluoride from epidote hornblende gneiss rock is much higher than the charnockite rocks. So if at all we are planning for some recharge structure, we should do that in charnockite rocks, because here you can recollect the geological map of the site. We have both the rocks equally distributed. But the problem has to be more pronounced in the epidote hornblende gneiss rock, because where release of fluoride is more rapid, as you can see in the diagram. So for this result also we plotted the same diagram that again confirms the operation of these 2 reactions. You get a nice positive relation between fluoride and the other ions. Then, because we have been doing on a long-term basis, so we wanted to see what really happens during the process of rainfall recharge in the chemistry of groundwater. So here are the 2 diagrams, right? The x-axis as usual is the time, and the y-axis we have plotted both concentration of fluoride as well as the groundwater level. So it is surprising to see out of the 35 wells we had been looking into this relationship, we got 2 distinct type of relationship. In one case, when groundwater table is rising, concentration of fluoride is also rising. In another case, when groundwater table is rising, concentration of fluoride is decreasing. Right? So 2 contradicting results. So one is type 1, that is the inverse relation. Another one is type 2. So out of these 2, which should be the better place to plan for a recharge site? The one on the left hand side, obviously, right? So our aim is to reduce the concentration of fluoride. So These two relationships we got, the same relationship we got at the 3 study sites wherein we had carried out the study. We have publications also, one from Nalgonda, another one in a nearby district, Krishnagiri district. So this has given us some insight on what recharge takes place, what should be the reason for this. So we have again carried out number of analysis. So here is a diagram which shows the water table in the well and the corresponding concentration of fluoride. So if you see, when the groundwater table is very shallow, that means when the points are the points which are plotting on the left hand side bottom, that indicates when the water table is shallow, concentration of fluoride in groundwater is less. When they are on the top right hand side, groundwater table is deep, concentration of fluoride is much higher. So the same thing is there in both the rock types, but it is much more pronounced in the epidote rock type. Then to check what is happening, so we drilled 3 boreholes, collected samples from different layers and conducted column test. That means we had a long column, the picture is very poor on the left hand side top, 1 meter pipe was used, the same material was filled in, the in situ groundwater was allowed to pass through. What happens during this process? So we had strangely observed both the process, that means both sorption process as well as desorption process. That means when you allow the groundwater which is rich in fluoride, 5 mg per liter is allowed to pass through, concentration of fluoride initially decreases. That means the soil material sorbs the fluoride. When you repeat the experiment again, that means when you pass a groundwater which is having lower fluoride concentration, the fluoride is again released back into groundwater. So this is the reason for having 2 types of relationship which I had showed you previously. I am telling you in a very simple terms. Hence, we thought of trying out how rainfall recharge will help us to improve the situation. So we have to look for a site that is having the type 1 relationship. That means the recharge is going to benefit us. So we had chosen one site. We had again had lot of difficulty, as the previous speaker was telling. So we could convince one person who is owning a well. We had gone in for a simple recharge system at the cost of about 25,000 rupees. So what we did is, you can see on the left hand side diagram, initially we selected a site which is relatively at a lower level. So it will function more like a funnel. Whatever rainfall that falls here will flow toward that site. That was a small something like a drainage funnel we constructed. We put a mesh and allowed that water to pass through the next chamber, which is a 1 meter and 1.5 meter dia. The ring was placed, that was divided into 3 compartments. The first compartment was filled with a coarser gravels. So whatever water that falls get collected into the funnel was allowed to pass through this chamber. Initially the water gets filtered by a coarser material, then the coarse sand, then the third chamber was left empty, then the water was allowed to pass through the existing dug well at the site. So a simple structure was constructed. You can see the pictures on the right hand side, and here are the results out of this structure. What you see on the left hand side is the topmost is the concentration of fluoride with respect to time, and the next is electrical conductivity of water, which is the measure of total dissolved solids. Then you can see the groundwater level, and lastly at the bottom you have the rainfall. Right? So on the vertical line is the date of construction of our recharge site. Here you can see the groundwater table has drastically improved. You can see even for you on the second diagram from the bottom, you can see the increase in, that is the green line, increasing after the construction, obviously because we are feeding in large amount of water. And drastically the electrical conductivity, the next figure, has reduced. Total dissolved solids has reduced because of the fresh rainfall recharge. Unfortunately, the concentration of fluoride has also reduced, and it is below around 1.5 mg per liter. That is the maximum recommended limit. So this is the impact of this recharge site at the well where we had gone in for a recharge structure. So just to see what will be the impact over the surrounding area, we had additionally chosen about 8 wells around the recharge site. The red dot at the center of the right hand side figure is the site where we had gone in for recharge. And here is the water table contour. You can see the mound has got formed because large water is allowed to pass into the dug well, created a mound, water is recharging the entire area, as you can see on the right hand side. Then we had also collected samples from these wells, about 6 wells. And here is the concentration of fluoride. At the center point, it is about 1.5. That has got some impact in an area of about 1 square kilometer. Such a simple structure has slightly improved the groundwater quality in the wells located within a 1 square kilometer area. The concentration otherwise will be 4 to 5 milligram per liter. So even at 1 kilometer, the concentration is reduced to about 3 milligram per liter. So with the help of such a simple structure, we are able to improve the groundwater quality in the region. However, we need such an intensive long-term hydrogeochemical study is necessary to carefully locate the recharge site. On the other hand, if you locate the recharge site in a type 2 relationship, we will adversely, that will lead to increase in the concentration of fluoride. So we have to carefully plan such structures for safe supply of fluoride-free groundwater to the public. I think these are all some of the publications based on this is the presentation, and I would like to thank the UGC for the financial support and also all the research fellows. I am speaking here on behalf of them. Thank you very much.